is Melissa Wiltrout, and this is my case study for AEP 858. So in this case, we have Mr. Rhodes, a new principal at Golden Oak High School, and he has been tasked by Dr. Newman, the superintendent, to resolve an attendance issue that has been developing over years. In particular, Mr. Rhodes decides to look at 5 students in particular who have very high rates of missed school days, and he is trying to figure out what he's going to do for these students. The case doesn't mention what he's going to do in general as a policy to decrease the amount of absences, but he is focusing on 5 who need help immediately, and that is a good plan. He's not sure what to do after evaluating the data, but he does know that he needs to involve stakeholders. This is a problem because it's a large district. It is next to a metropolitan area, and we have 85% of the students in this school who miss 10 or more days a year. That is a large number, and that is something that seriously needs to be considered and resolved. This is not normal, and they typically had very great attendance and very low teacher turnover, so this issue could be affecting other areas of success in the school as well. Mr. Rhodes, as mentioned, is our first-year principal. He's trying to fix a problem he didn't create, and that is tough for any principal, but especially a new principal. And so the way that he handles this will be a big indicator of whether or not he is able to be successful in this district, and I do think that he probably knows that and that his superiors know that as well. Dr. Newman is our superintendent, and he approved a policy that penalizes students for being absent. In particular, it penalizes their grades, so they can miss 10 points from their grade for missing 5 days or more in a quarter, which to me is a policy that is a little unrealistic. I do think that you can teach students about consequences in other ways, and that's something I'll talk about later in this video. The Board of Education is involved because they align with the law, and that's a great thing. I think policies are meant to be followed. They believe that absences should only be approved for illness, death, weather, and reasons deemed acceptable by the principal, which I happen to agree, and that is the policy that should be followed. Unfortunately, the teachers have not been. Homeroom teachers have been excusing absences, and that should not be allowed to continue. The parents have been letting their students skip school, and that should not be allowed to continue. They are at risk of being penalized by law. Our first student who Mr. Rhodes decided to investigate in terms of the number of absences was Karen. She's an 11th grader who had been doing very well in school and suddenly got married before her 11th grade year and totally tapered off. To me, this is a big one to evaluate because my understanding is that her parents would have had to approve that marriage. They did ask to have a meeting with the teachers. The counselor neglected to set that up, but if they approved her marriage, then that is a tricky dynamic and something that will need to be handled with care. Tyrone is another honor student. He is in 10th grade though. He is absent because his parents have work trips or his dad was going to Canada, and they indicate through letter that he will be having educational experiences at these places. However, nobody's following through on that. Nobody's holding him accountable, so whether or not he's actually doing something educational is unclear, and the extent and rigor of those experiences is likely low. Christina is a freshman. She's missing a lot for church. Her minister is the one who's trying to get her excused. To me, that is not allowed. That's not acceptable. A person other than parents and guardians should not be allowed to make those decisions. This is something that involves religion, though, so should be handled with great care as well. Don't want to step on any toes or offend anyone, but the problem here is that it is not a parent or guardian who is asking for those absences to be excused. Carl comes from a family that doesn't seem to prioritize education. He does take vocational classes, and his dad says that he can just work for him. But the fact of the matter is that he's not establishing skills or some sort of schedule that will translate to hardworking vocational skills in the real life. You have to be somebody who shows up, and you have to be somebody that works hard, and that's not what's happening at school. John is an 11th grader on the football team, and he was injured, which to me is a good reason to miss school. However, he did not have to miss the days that he is missing. His physical therapist made an exception for him if he wanted to keep playing. And so to me, there should have been a priority of academics over extracurriculars here. But the athletic director is at fault for giving him an additional day off in the afternoon. That is just showing that education does not matter, and that is not the mentality that we can have as educators. This conversation had between Mr. Rhodes and Dr. Newman was at the very beginning of the year. However, Mr. Rhodes did not choose to intervene until after Christmas, so we can assume that it's January. He was probably letting the data collect. However, I do believe he should have intervened sooner. Harm has been done to the students by the teachers and the parents, and Mr. Rhodes for not intervening sooner. The law likely has been broken by some parents because they may be truant. It seems like perhaps like Carl, for instance, may have been truant, and the others are on their path. Breach of contract has occurred from the teachers and from the counselor and potentially Mr. Rhodes. To summarize this case, I said a new principal is tasked with fixing an attendance issue that started before he was hired, in which several stakeholders have made unethical decisions that have and will continue to negatively impact student achievement if nothing is done to rectify the situation. There are 2 females and 3 males present in the group of students who are late or absent quite often. 2 were or are in honors classes, 3 are in regular, 1 is married, again, something to look into, and we have 2 juniors, 2 10th graders, 1 freshman. The teachers we know are approving absences, which should not be allowed ever, and we know that the algebra teacher is at least trying to advocate for the well-being of her student. Most teachers in this district stick around, so they have 10 or more years of experience in their position. However, we do know that at least 2 teachers are thinking of retiring. So is that because policies have been disregarded, or is it because they want to? We are unsure. The counselors are the ones who have the most contact with parents, but they don't seem to be following through with teachers, and they leave notes in the file. The parents, from what we know, 4 of the students come from 2-parent households. The only one we're unsure of is John. It doesn't mention his parents. And we know that most of the people in this community work for local industry, so we can assume that they may or may be adjacent to that, or they may own their own businesses. Most of them might commute to work, though, and that could play a big role in not following through with students. If you're gone 2 hours before school starts for your kid, then it is harder to know whether or not they're actually making it to school. And that does cause stress for students as well, not having parents who can be there to help you, pick you up, those kinds of things. We have 3 male administrators present as well. Again, this is Golden Oak High School, suburban community next to a metropolitan area. We can assume the school is in good condition, mostly middle-class families here, not very diverse until recently. And we do have some very high-income families, so I do think that the services provided are adequate and that everything is kept up to date. The curriculum will be the same as any other school. They have lots of extracurriculars, though. They have 31 clubs, 11 team sports. I can assume they have special education classes and very great interventions for those students with the resources they have available as a large district. And due to the recent increase in diverse population, I assume that they now have bilingual students. So this situation is damaging to all stakeholders, truly. I know that Mr. Rhodes realizes that as he's kind of assessing the data. And so he will have to make a decision that is good for school improvement, because if he does not help these students, then it's a domino effect that will affect their success in life, our school success, the community, and people may not want to bring their kids to a school that doesn't have a high achievement rate. After evaluating the records, he needs to consider, what did the previous principal do? Why did it fail? Did it fail? Why did that principal leave? What can he do to ensure that he doesn't just make the same mistakes? Some considerations are to take no action. I would not do that. I think it's irresponsible. Taking no action would just mean letting these students fail, and I don't think that that is what an educator would do. An educator is going to do everything in their power to support a student and to ensure that they are able to be their most successful self, whether it's academically or mentally or real life, like in their career, whatever it is. That's our job. The comprehensive action I would take would be to kind of take on this whole responsibility. I would set meetings, I would make agendas, I would create action plans, I would check in bi-weekly. This would be something that I present data at. I disaggregate it so that parents, teachers, board members can see the direct correlation between all of these elements. Some other actions I could take are to let the teachers fix it on their own, or let Dr. Newman fix it on his own, just kind of write it out for the year essentially. So take a couple of steps, meet with them, but essentially follow the policies as is. This is not something that ideally I would select because I like to take responsibility for my actions and responsibility in my job. The pros and cons for each are pretty different. I don't see any pros for no action other than maybe it keeps me from having uncomfortable conversations, and it might save some embarrassment on my part, although I do think it could cause more. The comprehensive action plan seems to have the most pros, and the other one does have a few cons as well. It is important to be equitable with whatever decision is made. And I've already addressed these things. In the comprehensive plan, as mentioned earlier, I would meet bi-weekly. I would create steps. I would evaluate. If it's not working, have a new plan. Assess the data. I think that 2 weeks of data, while it is not ideal, it is data. And it is important to see where we're going, if we're making progress, reaching out and using every resource possible. I believe that this would allow for school improvement, and I did indicate on here that in the reading it said, school attendance benefits society as well as individuals. Society reaps benefits from an educated and informed citizenry, while individuals are able to realize greater economic benefits because of job credentials and skills. This is so important. We need to be dedicated to our students, and they need to be dedicated to education. We need to show up for them. They need to show up for them. Everyone should be involved. It should be a community effort because it does affect the entire community. I would create meetings where I would collaborate with these individuals and create a plan. I would readdress the policies in the handbook, and we would definitely hit on those. I would ask to reevaluate the policy of reducing 10 points every quarter. I think there are other consequences that students can have, such as not getting the grade because they didn't do it. They weren't there. To me, that is a better consequence, or recognizing I might have to take night classes or online classes or summer school or what have you. I do believe that there would be resistance from the board, the parents, and the teachers. I think that if the teachers truly are not okay with following policies for the well-being of the students, then more than likely they will have a conversation with me about that, and hopefully we can come to terms on the fact that we're doing this for the kids. And so we have to do our best in that regard. The parents of students who don't really seem to care about education would be more on board if everybody just adopted these policies and did their best. If it was just a norm, it was a high expectation that we held everyone accountable, and the community really chipped in on that. The board supported it, the authorities supported it. I really think that we would have great success there. Students, staff, Dr. Newman, the board, parents all need to know about this, and I would ask for all of their help. I don't need them to solve it for me, but I do want their support in the decisions that are made. And I do want their communication while developing those strategies, because I don't want to just spring something on them and expect them to be okay with it. No parent would be all right with that. And if they were, then I don't know that they would be that invested in their child's education. Would never threaten my staff. I think it's important to present the data and to really focus on the fact that we are trying to improve achievement, which is part of this whole process of improvement, in that some of the decisions we've made have actually harmed our students, and that they have broadened the achievement gap, and we don't want to do that. We want to do our best to ensure every kid is successful. This doesn't work, all of this doesn't work, I would just communicate with the other principals in the district. This is just one of the high schools. I would ask them what they're doing, what works, and just kind of try to adopt some of their policies that fit my school, because I think that that is a wise decision to make, and that they could be very useful, beneficial in that situation. My standard correlation is here, and I will be addressing that in my written response above my submission, but that is it. This was a complicated case with various different answers, but I do think that data ultimately would drive a lot of the decisions made, and it would be very important to present it in a way that emphasizes student growth and success and well-being, and uses data and research to support what is happening, because that is how decisions are made, and that is how success is achieved. So, thank you for watching. Have a great day.